Yo, what's going on, guys? It's Tyler from the Keep Pounding podcast. So, Panther Nation training camp is heating up. There's plenty to talk about. So, with the practices becoming more physical, Bryce Young continuing the momentum throughout camp, the Hall of Fame game just around the corner. There's quite a few things to talk about and discuss. So, we're gonna go over why Panthers practice has been getting a little chippy and what the fights really mean, if anything at all. What do you guys think about it? We'll also go over is Bryce Young on the verge of a breakout season? Some key takeaways. We're going to go over Brandt Tillis, his press conference, and we'll also go over what to watch out for in the Hall of Fame game coming up. And then we're going to break down the Panthers' unofficial depth chart and the biggest surprises, go over the latest injury updates from training camp and players who are rising, falling, and fighting for some roster spots. So training camp is obviously where the team starts to take shape. Everybody practices it, and every practice gives us a better idea of what the Panthers could look like when the regular season begins. So, Panther Nation, what storyline are you watching the closest? Do you think Bryce Young is poised for a breakout year? Which position battle has your attention? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button. Subscribe to the podcast if you're new, so that way you can get some up-to-date Panther news, training camp coverage, roster analysis, and everything Carolina football. So let's dive into the content. And I really want to go over first some NFC South news. So there's been a little bit of news since I've seen you guys last, and we're going to kind of update you with the NFC South before we kind of dive into our content. But Chris Olave got a 4-year extension worth up to $132 million, $90 million guaranteed. So this will tie him up at least for 3 years with the Saints. So that gives Tyler Shough his go-to receiver moving forward. Obviously, this isn't great news for us, but just want to keep you up, guys, update you guys on what's going on around the NFC South. So that was something that was brought up since the last time I saw you. And then also, unfortunately, the Falcons, they did agree to a massive 3-year deal with their running back, Bijan Robinson, averaging $25 million per year. $75 million is the max value with $51 million guaranteed. So the highest ever for a running back. So, we'll have one of the best running backs in football in our division for another 3 years. So that's it is what it is. But that's a lot of money for a running back. He's not just any running back. He's elite. Obviously, in the backfield, you got to watch him out. Not just running the ball in the backfield. He can do it all. So he's just somebody that it makes sense that they sign him for. He's like a Christian McCaffrey that doesn't get injured really. So he's around for another 3 years. And then unfortunate news on the Falcons side is Jalen Walker. So soon to be was going to be his second year. Jalen Walker tore his ACL, a brutal injury for the Falcons defense. Walker, he had an MRI that confirmed the ACL tear. So now the Falcons are going to be without Walker and James Pierce Jr. I'm not sure how long they're going to be without him, but James Pierce Jr. won't be there at the beginning of the year either. So the Falcons, some brutal injuries, and they're kind of poised for a not so great year. They got Tua, then Michael Penix. They don't even know who their quarterback is. You had the Falcons social media team post on Twitter today about Tua threw an interception, and AJ Terrell picked up the interception. And I don't know why they posted that out there. I don't know if that was supposed to be a flex. I get like Terrell made an interception, but bro, like everyone knows that you guys are hurting the quarterback position, and you post that. It didn't make any sense. So, but the Falcons, that is brutal, really, really brutal for that team. It's going to be a rough year. You never know how a year is going to shape. So, not saying that their season's over, but it doesn't look good. Doesn't look good. Okay, so if you haven't heard already, the Panthers depth piece, defensive lineman LeBrian Ray, he abruptly retired from the NFL. He's only 28, so the Panthers officially placed him on the reserve retired list after he missed a training camp practice ahead of the team's preseason opener. Dave Canales did mention during the press conference that he disclosed that Ray's absence from practice was due to personal reasons. Before the retirement was finalized, later that night. So not sure what happened or what's going on or why he abruptly retired, but this obviously removes a pretty decent rotational piece along the defensive line. LeBrian Ray has been with us since 2023 and hasn't been terrible, but this really gives Aaron Hall, the undrafted free agent out of Duke that we picked up this year, he's going to have more opportunities to be that depth piece with LeBrian Ray retiring. So that is another piece of that what's going on with the Panthers. And so let's kind of go over another one of the other things I want to go over was Princely Umanmielen. So if you remember last week, I mentioned that Jalen Phillips reached out or during his press conference mentioned that he was their top gifted pass rusher, right? That's a pretty high praise for Jalen Phillips. But Princely personally thanked him. He said the praise means a lot because it comes from a former first-round pick, an established pass rusher. Someone's already built a strong reputation in the league. Coaches want more than just sacks, though. Everyone recognizes Princely's pass rushing talent, but Dave Canales did mention that he wants him to be a more complete outside linebacker. So he needs to improve not just pass rush, but also run defense. Can he be consistent in first and second downs, handling different blocking schemes, playing every down instead of only the obvious passing down? So with Nick scoring out for the season with the ACL injury, Carolina needs Princely to take on a much larger role. I think Princely even mentioned that he believes he's a different player. He even admitted during his presser that he wasn't really maximizing his talent in college. He even told his younger brother, if I was doing everything I'm doing now, I would have been a first-round pick. He did say the biggest issue wasn't talent, it was just discipline and consistency. And he made some changes this offseason. He changed some daily habits, sleep quality, nutrition, vitamins, reading regularly. Overall, just discipline and routine is something that he implemented this offseason so far. And he's also committing his life to Christ, had significant impact on his mindset and daily life. And he left social media. So if you follow the Panthers, just Twitter in general, Panther Twitterverse is what I call it, he was on there quite a bit. But that was one of the biggest changes was deleting his Twitter. He admitted he spent too much time reading the comments, felt the need to respond to fans, and just kind of said he felt like an unhealthy cycle. He actually mentioned that his uncle kind of reached out to him and said that, hey, get off Twitter until you make a Pro Bowl. So he did mention Instagram was harder to quit, but he's also just trying to reduce his overall social media. So everyone obviously believes in Princely. I do like that he's making these changes to be able to maximize his opportunity with what he's been given with Nick scoring out. But the question has always been whether he could consistently match the talent with preparation and discipline. So, again, Jalen Phillips with a glowing praise. Canales has confidence in him. And so the Panthers, he could be a breakout candidate. This is someone that could have a breakout year after the season is over, kind of how Nick Scorton, when Pat Jones got injured last year, Nick Scorton, he really embodied like the preparation, what it's like what Dave Canales and Dan Morgan want a Panther to be. So hopefully he can maximize his opportunity. It's unfortunate that Nick Scorton is out for the year, but this gives Princely the opportunity to showcase, can he be an every down outside linebacker, edge rusher. Now, since I saw you guys last, Chris Brazzell, they mentioned that he was going to be out for 8 weeks. But after a second opinion, the doctors did recommend surgery, which he did elect to do and will be out for the season. So this obviously means more reps for XL. XL already had, technically the wide receiver 3 position, but with Chris Brazzell there, but it's just nice to get them back. And then Bobby Brown III was activated from the non-football injury list, the NFI list, but still Damian Lewis is sidelined. So when Dave Canales earlier this week or last week, he was mentioning and going over the different players that were injured and that were out. And he mentioned Damian Lewis, that it seemed like he pretty much said he was day to day. And Robert Hunt, he was kind of like, we'll see. And Robert Hunt, I really thought Damian Lewis was going to come back before Robert Hunt. This isn't something that I think anybody should worry about, but this is just something to keep an eye on, because to me, Damian Lewis is the focal point of the offensive line. Obviously, Robert Hunt is a huge talent too, but just Damian Lewis has really been a solid player for us consistently with minimal to no injuries. So, Canales did mention starting camp early did allow the medical staff to kind of address the lingering injuries and get players back before the regular preseason schedule ramps up, which is obviously important so that starters can get good quality reps before the season starts. So Dave Canales did mention that he wants to play the starters. There's going to be some starters he's going to play more than others throughout the preseason. There's no starters that are going to be playing during the Hall of Fame game, besides like some position battles that were, the nickel or something like that. Maybe the player that's going to play alongside Derek Brown, whether it's Cam Jackson or Lee Hunter. But overall, like the established starters are not going to play the Hall of Fame game. But he did mention the preseason games that those starters will. As far as how much they're going to play, I don't know. I would assume like probably a couple series for preseason 1 game, preseason 2, maybe 3, 4, depending on the quality of reps. But I do expect the starters to play more than they have been the last couple of years. And I think that's something that Dan Morgan and Dave Canales have probably talked about this offseason is and how they can improve and what things that Dave could have done better the last couple of years. And I do think offseason gearing players up for week 1, because the last couple of years have been slow as far as like getting, winning games and just having our best football for the year out there. It took a lot longer than I think he and the organization would have liked. So knowing that, I think it is a balance, right? You want players to play and get game ready, right? And get some live reps, some good quality reps. So that way week 1 against the Bears are ready to go. But also you want to make sure that, you don't want to injure a player either. So there's that give and take. So we'll see when it comes to the actual preseason games, how much the starters play. Now, again, Hall of Fame game, it's not an actual preseason game. It's just like a live. It's like they don't count as a preseason game. It's just another evaluation process. So, did want to mention. So there's a couple of notable visitors at practice the other day. You had Seth Curry. I thought this was pretty cool. Seth Curry came out along with his brother-in-law Damian Lee, who did play for the for NBA before. And I think he played for the Warriors, if I'm not mistaken, and then played for the Suns. I can't remember. But they came out and just kind of hung out with Bryce Young. I think that was so. Some people in certain positions with certain jobs, I don't know. But I thought it was pretty cool that you had Seth Curry come out and hang out with Bryce Young. Now, one little scare during practice was XL. Dom, thank you. I appreciate it. Yes, if you guys haven't hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. I appreciate it. I really do. Thank you, Dom. Appreciate it. Good to see you, sir. Okay, so XL had a little scare, got injured during practice. So XL, he went up for a ball in the back of the end zone, came down hard on his back and his head. So Leggett got up on his own, which was obviously a great sign, but he did get carted into the locker room, which is not a great sign. And then he had several teammates checking on him before he leaves. Let's just talk about him. So it's just Bryce, everything I've been reading about him, obviously fans can't go to the practices. Hopefully next year they will. And I try not to read or overhype or overanalyze anything when it comes to training camp. Like, these are controlled environments, right? They should play well in practice. But what I'm looking for primarily is consistency. Can these players consistently perform during practice, right? Are they just the consistency part of that? And everything that I've been reading, even Scott Fowler has mentioned this, like, he looks different. Talking about him to air it out more, not just because he's calling plays, but also because he believes in Bryce, and Bryce is looking good during training camp. So if we can be successful, which is a key word, like, we have to be success. He has to be successful when he's throwing the ball down the field, or it's going to make it harder for them to call those plays, right? But when they allowed him to throw the ball down the field. He was the most accurate throwing the ball down the field. There's a stat I saw earlier today by Edgar, Panthers analyst on Twitter, seeing that he was the most accurate down the field. I believe it was like 20 plus yards. It was like 75% completion percentage, which is insane. Second best was Sam Darnold at 70. So if Bryce can play that way consistently, he's going to get himself paid, which is obviously what we want. I want to pay. If Bryce plays so well, we have to make him the highest paid quarterback. Great. That's great. So hopefully, again, this season's all about consistency. I think he's primed to have a great year because not only, offensive line, yes, you had Icky getting injured, and then now you have Taylor Moton injured. Now you have your two different tackles that you had compared to last year, right? And even your center is going to be different this year. Your guards are only two that you're familiar with, so that's going to take a little bit of getting used to. But with T-Mac developing, Jalen Coker at the 2 now, and then hopefully XL can continue to develop and get back to his form, that kind of how he was playing his rookie year. I think this is a year that Bryce Young can really light it up, and with a better defense on top of that. You got now some pass rush. This defense can be a top 10 defense, even top 5. So let's also kind of go over here. So the Hall of Fame game. The Hall of Fame game is here. It is Thursday. So Dave Canales did announce Kenny Pickett will start Thursday's Hall of Fame game against the Cardinals. So Pickett's expected just to play a few series before handing things over to Haynes King, the rookie undrafted free agent from Georgia Tech. So King, he should and will be getting a lot of reps. Had Will Grier not taken the coaching job with the Cowboys, I think Haynes' reps would have been significantly reduced. So with Grier out, Haynes King will really have a great opportunity to possibly make the 53-man roster. But he'll be able to put a lot of tape out there for the other 31 teams if he doesn't end up with the practice squad. So we'll probably see a lot of running out of Haynes King. He's a very mobile guy. He has a strong arm. In my opinion, I do think what I've read and what I've seen so far, King does have more upside than Kenny Pickett, but he just has to continue to develop. So we'll see if he will eventually stay on the team. Kenny Pickett, he's going to be our QB2. Haynes King isn't going to replace him, in my opinion, unless he just lights it up, and Pickett just does not. But let's see what Haynes King can do. I'm excited about watching him play against the Cardinals. But I have actually, talking about Pickett, I've heard some reports that Pickett hasn't done well during practice as far as like staying in the pocket, just his pocket presence. Canales, on the other side, is also giving him a lot of praise so far this camp. But again, with the Hall of Fame game, Bryce Young and most of the starters are not expected to play, which is obviously typical for an extra preseason game. And obviously the 4th preseason game does give the coaching staff more evaluation opportunities for the depth pieces. So obviously starters will mostly sit, but again, I mentioned before, Canales did emphasize that the Panthers won't play most of their established starters. However, there's going to be some positional battles that could still see some snaps. So the extra preseason game does provide more film for the players competing for those final roster spots, practice squad spots, and some starting jobs. And I do think you could see Corey Thornton and Shaw Smith-Wade out there maybe for a series or two. Same thing with Cam Jackson and Lee Hunter. And we'll kind of go over the depth chart here in a little bit. But those are positions that are not, I think, set in stone. So we'll see. But Canales did also mention, kind of reiterate that he does prefer the evaluating the starters during joint practices where coaches can kind of script the specific situations in a controlled environment. But again, he did mention he'll probably start the starters, but we'll see how much. But I'm a firm believer, yes, I do think joint practices are well and good, and they're better than training camp because it's with different players and you're not used to those players' tendencies. But it's just something different when the lights are on, you have the crowd there, it's on TV, and with the quarterback specifically, during joint practices, you're not getting hit. And so if you know mentally that you're not going to get hit, you're more relaxed and you should practice and play well during joint practice. But an actual game, you are going to get hit. And so mentally, there's a possibility you can get hit. So I think that those type of reps are more important and better than joint practices, which I get. The joint practices, you're trying to minimize risk, but still get a good quality practice out of it. So, but I am looking forward to this game, but mainly I want to see Hings, King, and some of the depth pieces out there. Now, I want to kind of go over Brandt Tillis here. So Brandt Tillis, he had a press conference the other day. Didn't really say that much, but we'll kind of go over what he was talking about. So one of the things that he emphasized and talked about was analytics. That analytics obviously play a major role in the roster decisions. He uses analytics to help kind of forecast the future performance of players. He uses that information as far as evaluating waiver claims, practice squad decision making, and even the final 53-man roster construction. But you can tell he kind of seemed annoyed during the press conference. I always enjoy listening to Brandt Tillis, but also he comes off kind of awkward, in my opinion. Just like, I don't know if he feels like the questions are just annoying or redundant or whatever, but he just seemed very annoyed with specific questions. They talked to him about Bryce Young and his future contract. It said that they've been in contact with Bryce Young and his agent, but wouldn't really talk about, obviously, where they're at, and just pretty much said, we're going to let this year play out and see what happens. He kind of said his ceiling is unknown. A lot of people kind of took that out of context and kept talking about how, does he not know does he not believe in Bryce Young, or does he think that he doesn't know what Bryce Young's ceiling could be? He's just saying the sky's the limit. So he wasn't trying to bash him there. He talked about age. So age matters. He mentioned how there is a higher upside with younger players. Younger players do get the tiebreaker. And then, I don't know, the reporters really tried to get anything out of him, and they just couldn't. They couldn't. And they even talked about Mike Jackson, his contract. And again, same thing he mentioned about Bryce Young. They're in contacts with him. He's like, obviously you don't, it's a good thing to have good players, but we'll see what happens. So it does seem like they want to and extend him, but it kind of depends on, does that mirror what Mike Jackson's looking for as well? So it does look like they possibly may want to do a 1 year, 2 year deal with Mike Jackson. Obviously he's 30, which is older for corners, but Mike Jackson is playing at a high level. He wants to get paid. He deserves to get paid. He's outperformed his contract. The Panthers always done a great job since Dan Morgan and Brandt Tillis took the helm of rewarding players like that. But at the end of the day, he mentioned they do what's best for the football team. So for some reason, Will Lee just shows up this year and plays well, or they find a young player out there that they feel has the same kind of possible ceiling as Mike Jackson, they may go that way, right? So if Mike Jack kind of doesn't play as well and they get outbid, contract-wise, they have Will Lee that they like, that they feel like could develop behind him, or even Corey Thornton. Corey Thornton has stepped in and played really well. They may go that route. So again, is it a possibility that Mike Jack could get a contract extension? Yes, but they would like to. But let's see if they can make a deal and agree on terms. They also kind of talked about Icky. He did mention he would like to get him back this year. He mentioned how that would be great, and obviously it would be great because that's for our team, but also, it's great for our team, but also it's like they want to see if he can play and can he get back to his former self. I think that's the biggest thing, is like you have to weigh in their injuries. Obviously, like with Icky and at left tackle, can he get back to the way he was before, right? He's not going to get that contract extension. He's not going to get that deal he would have gotten if he didn't tear his patellar tendon against the Rams last year in the playoffs. That's just the worst timing for Icky, and I feel so bad for him. And he deserves to get paid, but as a Panther fan, and if I'm in Brandt Tillis' situation, or if I'm in the front office, sure, you want to extend Icky, but at the same time, though, we did sign Monroe Freeling, who I think that it will be their future left tackle. You have, because you're going to, whenever Timo comes back from the blood clot issue, he's going to be the right tackle. And it's just going to be interesting how, just speaking about that in general, it's going to be interesting to see how they deal with that situation, depending on how Monroe Freeland's playing and Rasheed Walker's playing. If Rasheed Walker's playing really well, I don't think that the Panthers will want to immediately move Monroe Freeland to the left, because Timo's going to be at least out for 4 weeks, right? And everything that I've been reading about the reports of Monroe Freeland is he's been doing well and getting better and better. I do expect some growing pains with him, but it's not going to be for the whole year. Timo will be back at right tackle if and when he's healthy, right? Obviously, his health is the biggest concern. You want him to get better. But it's really going to be interesting to see, with Taylor Moton getting back healthy, starting at right tackle, what do they do at left tackle and what do they do with Monroe Freeling? They probably, in my opinion, they're probably going to want to ease him into the left tackle position, because with the rookie, and Canales has mentioned this before, you don't want them to play too many spots because they're not really mastering one spot, right? Like when you have corners, having a depth at corner, but then also that person's also playing nickel and then safety, and they're all over the place, which is great to have versatility, but you also want a player to really hone in their craft at one specific position. And Monroe Freeland, we picked in the first round for a reason. He's going to be our future tackle. Is it going to be right or left? We don't know, but my guess is they drafted him to be our future left tackle. You have Jordan Gross that did that his first year. I forget who got injured, but he took over right tackle. But then the following year, he played left tackle. So I'm going to find it very interesting to see how they deal with that situation. That's going to be something to watch. But yeah, so during Brandt Tillis's press conference, there wasn't really anything that he talked about. He did mention that they're already looking at 2027 as far as what that team is going to look like, free agents, the NFL draft, all that. So he's already thinking about that. So what's going on, Darkness? As someone who was forced to watch Pickett play for the Steelers, do panics a lot, like the moment someone even takes a step past offensive line, freaks out. Yeah, and I mentioned Sheena Quick did mention that he hasn't looked all that great in camp, that she's noticed. He hasn't looked good. So we obviously don't want Kenny Pickett to have any playing time. Zero. Zero. Don't want him. I work with someone that is a Steelers fan, and he told me that. He's like, yeah, I saw you guys sign Kenny Pickett. I'm like, yeah, as our death piece. He's like, you don't want him to play, do any playing time. So he's just there to give good quality reps for the death pieces. They kept asking contracts. They kept. I mean, that's the guy who does the contract negotiation, right? So you're trying. Same thing with Dan Morgan. I think you're going to get more out of Dan Morgan than you will Brandt Tillis. There was something that he said, and then Joe Person brought it up, and he was like, "Wait, you said this." So you could. I forget what it was, but he tried to be careful with his wording. But if you kind of just deep dive into everything a little bit, at least for me, Bryce Young, it's just about, as far as contracts, it depends how he plays this year. Depending on how he plays, depends if they re-sign him, and depends on how much they re-sign him for. Mike Jackson, they want to get a deal done, but also, it has to make sense for us, and it has to make sense for him. We'll see. So to me, it looks like they want to re-sign him, but they're happy if they do. It is what it is if they don't. So that was pretty much the gist that I got from his presser. So depth chart. So let's go over the depth chart. The unofficial depth chart, the Panthers released that the other day. Nothing too surprising here. Obviously, T-Mac is your 1, Jalen Coker is your 2, Rasheed Walker, left tackle, Damian Lewis, your left guard, Luke Fortner, your center, right guard, Robert Hunt, Monroe Freeland, right tackle. That was obvious. Tommy Trimble was obvious as well. So was XL. So was Bryce Young. There's nothing that I really see here as far as the ones that anyone should be surprised about. Now, The only thing I was kind of like surprised or not, just kind of kept my eye out for was Jimmy Horn Jr. was ahead of John Mechie. And obviously this is subject to change, guys. Obviously it's subject to change. So that's something to keep an eye on. Jimmy Horn Jr. to me, in order for him to make a roster spot, he has to contribute to special teams. He has to. If he does not contribute to special teams, to me, he's the odd man out. Now, I'm not saying that's 100% a fact. I just think that's my opinion. But with Chris Brazzell out, that there is a higher probability that Jimmy Horn Jr. can make the team, even if he doesn't make special teams. But if he can contribute to special teams, I think that really solidifies a roster spot for him. Another person to keep an eye on that I've heard quite a amount of buzz about, and even during the presser the last couple of weeks, has been Jasim Reed, the undrafted wide receiver, the undrafted free agent wide receiver that we picked up last year. Obviously, I'm not saying he's going to be a Jalen Coker, but he's got Jalen Coker vibes. He's doing things right consistently. He's reliable. He has great route running. He knows every wide receiver position. He's comfortable and consistent. That's the biggest thing. That's what Jalen Coker was. He was just consistent, and he was so consistent, Dave Canales was forced to put him on a roster spot, right? I wasn't a fan of Jalen Coker. Whenever they put Jalen Coker on the waiver wire, I was so afraid. And I wasn't the only one podcast-wise that was mentioning this about Jalen Coker. He just looked that's all you want in a player, right? A player that, yes, you want to look at upside, but how consistent can you play? And that's what Jalen Coker is. And that's what I'm seeing so far, and what I'm reading reports on is Jasim Reed has really looked good. So that's a player to keep an eye on. That is a player to keep an eye on. And then also, it does look like Luke Fortner, as far as like center, it wasn't surprising because Dave Canales did mention last week that Luke Fortner was pretty much the starter and getting the first team reps. I really thought Sam Heck and Luke Fortner will kind of split it, but it looks like they're kind of going to allow Sam Heck to ease into that position. But that is a position that I'm still kind of keeping my eye on to see how, if anything changes or develops with that. But it does look like Luke Fortner is going to be the starter week 1. Stone Forsythe better not be number 2 in any spot. He is, bro. He wouldn't be if Timo was out. Because if Timo was out, you would see Stone Forsythe at 3. But with Timo out and Monroe Freeling playing right tackle for quite a while, unfortunate, man. But Stone Forsythe, he had the worst PFF grade as a starting left tackle. That's all I'm going to say. So hopefully Rasheed Walker will stay healthy. He will definitely get someone killed on the field. Yes. So hopefully Rasheed Walker can stay healthy. Okay, let's go over to the defense. So defensively, nothing really too big or anything that I see that jumps out. The only thing that I saw here was more obviously Cam Jackson is the go-ahead mate right next to Derek Brown over Lee Hunter, but obviously we know Ejiro Evero hates playing rookies, and you have to earn a spot. You have to earn, being on the first team, right? Nick Scorton Evero was kind of forced into that because Pat Jones was out for the year, and you even saw even Dave Canales had to be like, "Hey, Evero," pretty much. We all know that Dave Canales had to sit down with Evero, like, "Bro, you need to play these guys. They need to play in time," and hopefully Evero will allow Lee Hunter to kind of share these reps and develop, because I think Lee Hunter could be a really big force. But Cam Jackson has looked great during camp too. And then also one of the things I thought was interesting was Pat Jones being the starter over Princely. And again, it doesn't surprise me. Doesn't surprise me at all. But hopefully, again, the snap shares will be pretty even between those two. And then Will Lee, I thought that was interesting. He's CB5, which I thought was interesting because he's been getting a lot of reps at first team reps during camp. But it does make sense, though. You're not going to have Will Lee ahead of Corey Thornton or Shaw Smith Wade. Shaw Smith Wade, we can do better than him. Will Lee obviously has higher upside than him, but you're not going to put Will Lee over Corey Thornton right now. So keep an eye out for that as far as where if Will Lee kind of moves up and down. But the biggest thing I'm looking for is the nickel position, which they don't have out here. And I still think that's Corey Thornton's job to lose if he stays healthy. And yes, so like JC Horn also will play nickel more in certain packages than he did last year. That there's been reports of that, but that's not going to negate the fact that there's still going to be a primary nickel that they're going to have to designate. And I do think that'll be Corey Thornton. You got to wait one more year, Darkness. You got to wait one more year. He's not that bad. He's not that bad, guys. Come on. You can be worse than Nick Scott. I've said this before. You can be worse than Nick Scott. You can be better than it. We can get better, but we could be worse. He didn't play that bad. Now, the year before that, he gave up a lot of deep shots. He did give up some deep shots, some touchdowns last year, but it was significantly better than it was the year prior. And remember, Evero loves stopping the run, and Nick Scott is great at stopping the run, just not that great in coverage. He's not. And then also here, nothing too surprising, obviously, with the special teams. Obviously, Sam Martin is going to be your punter. You have Ryan Fitzgerald as your kicker, J.J. Jansen for another year with the Panthers. But I did find it interesting that they have Trevor Etienne over Jimmy Horn Jr. And I really haven't heard or read that much about how many, for the most part, there hasn't been anything consistent that I've read that shows that Trevor Etienne has been given primary reps or not. There's been one report of someone saying that they really haven't given Jimmy Horn Jr. any opportunities, but I don't know how legit or not that is, to be honest. So, but again, in my opinion, I do think Jimmy Horn Jr., in order for him to really solidify being on the team, is he has to contribute on special teams. So we'll see. We'll see. But let me know what you guys think in the comments. Let me know, what position battles you're still looking at. What storylines you guys are kind of watching closely, what your thoughts are about Bryce Young and how you think he's going to play this year. Again, which position battles has your attention. So if you haven't, if you're new to the pod, please subscribe to the channel. It really helps me out. I'm just a small growing Panthers podcast that's trying to grow. So that way when I go live and make videos, I want to be able to interact with you guys like Darkness and Dom here. So do me a favor, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, get in the comments. Let me know what your thoughts are. But I'm excited. Football is here. We got the Hall of Fame game Thursday and football for the rest of the year. For the rest of the year, we got football. I'm just happy. My wife isn't, but I am. So appreciate you guys. See you guys on the next one. Keep pounding.